Okay, so I know we'll have a few more folks join us, but I'll go ahead and get started. And just want to start by saying thank you to all of you for taking the time out. I know for many of you, this might be your lunch hour, so thank you for joining us. And we're really looking forward to this because I'm an associate vice president with BWF, and for me, I focus entirely on healthcare clients. So I am on the frontline counsel side of the shop, and I'm an associate vice president with our campaigns and fundraising strategy team. And we work with all of you in those frontline roles, either executing events or driving forward the overall strategies, especially as they relate to campaigns. And, as we thought about what great ways we could, really talk about healthcare and the landscape of what's in front of us right now, a few things became apparent. And one is healthcare has a different audience. Healthcare speaks to donors in a different way. And those important nuances actually can apply across the field and across the work that we do, including with events. And as I work with healthcare clients across the country, a question that I have been receiving is, do events hold the same weight that they once did? And for all of you who have gathered here today to hear the answer to that, I will start by saying yes, absolutely. So healthcare is special. Events are special. When they have the proper strategies behind them, they are an incredibly effective fundraising tool, no matter if you are implementing the event or attending the event or simply following up after. There is a role for everyone, and understanding how healthcare might need to treat events a little bit differently, including your audience and the messaging. That's what we're really here to talk about today. And I'm so excited to have each of you join us because we know that this must obviously be an important topic of conversation for all of you. And it's important to understand not only that, yes, I work with healthcare clients across the country. I've been a longtime practitioner, and with BWF, I get the pleasure of working with clients from near and far. While I'm located in Tampa, Florida, I can tell you not only am I a longtime practitioner and consultant, I also am a former event specialist. So you can see here, these photos are actually from 2007, 2008 period. And you may have heard me say hello to a former Ohio State Buckeye. These are from my Ohio State days when I was an event specialist, and can tell you, as someone who has grown up with events and the fundraising, landscape that we see today, the trends that come and go, hold strong with events, and there really will always be a place. But again, we come back to, you must have the right strategies behind it in order for it to be truly effective. So today we're going to talk about, as I think about our role in healthcare, of course, the analogies will always come up, and we want to do a comprehensive checkup. And today we're going to talk about, let's review all the event types and what their purpose and roles truly are. And then how are we unique? Why are we unique? And how does that apply to actual events? And then as we think about all of the various types of events, they're going to be throughout a campaign, yes, of course, but many people really do focus on, what does that campaign launch event really look like? And how does healthcare differ maybe from some of our academic partners? And then the magic is in the follow-up. So we'll talk about that event follow-up and how, regardless if you're an annual fund, major gift, or principal gifts, that event follow-up has something for everyone. And I will leave time for question and answers, but I really encourage you, please, you'll see here we have a Q&A. Please do put your questions in Q&A, and I will be sure that I review them as we go along. But there will be some time at the end for questions as well. Okay, so let's start. This is our only polling question, but I'm really interested to know, are you in a campaign and are you planning an event? So are you planning to host a campaign kickoff event in the next 12 to 18 months? You'll see here that yes, the date is set and we're chugging forward and making those plans. Yes, but the planning process has not quite begun. No, we are not in a campaign. and we are not in a campaign, but I hope to learn more. Then we have a few folks who might genuinely be unsure because that planning period, and we'll talk about that, it lasts for a really long time, and sometimes it's a little nebulous. Let's see, we've got about 65 of you have participated, 65%. Few more here. Okay, so it looks like the majority of you know that you are in a campaign and know that there is a campaign launch and or other types of events that will complement your campaign. And some of you say, yes, we are, but we're in the planning process and those details haven't been formulated yet. Regardless of how you've answered this question, we're going to cover the material that will apply again, even if you're not in a campaign. One of the important takeaways from today is healthcare is unique, and that does bleed over into our event space. So as long as we are considering those unique factors, regardless of campaign timeline, there is a time and place and strategy that can be applied. Okay, we're going to share these results. You can see here, again, about 41% of you are moving forward, 21% are moving forward, but dates aren't quite secured yet. Okay. So when we think about events, we have to start with what is our experience going to be? But really what we need to think about is what are the expectations of our event attendees? We're going to talk about all the various types. We're going to talk about who you should invite and how you should invite them. But at the core, we need to understand that donors have new expectations. These expectations are actually applied across our sector, regardless of a principal gift, engagement, and solicitation, or all the way down to annual fund. And we even have digital fundraising where iPhone videos can be sent to a $50 donor. But you know what that is? It's memorable. It's transparent. It's personalized. It shows impact. These components are necessary in all of our communication, all of our strategies, all of the tasks and tactics that lead up to these strategies, including events. And while we may think of these in our day-to-day roles, if you are able to apply these across the ways that you invite, it could be a memorable event invitation. It may be a memorable immersive experience at your event. It may simply be stewardship and reporting out on the impact in video format, verbal, website. If you keep these components in mind and understand that these are what our audience members and donors expect from every engagement with us, these are a nice guiding principle that will guide you down that right path. So before we really dive into what makes us unique, it's important to understand that there are multiple types of events, and I know you're all very experienced, but as we speak with leaders, as we speak with donors, they may not have a full understanding of the event type and, most importantly, the purpose of each event. They mostly default right away to a fundraising event. We're fundraisers. Every event that we have is a fundraising event. Not true. Do we hope it will lend itself to fundraising? Absolutely. A fundraising event is that gala, the golf tournament. It has some sort of transaction associated, be it buying a ticket, buying a whole sponsorship at a tournament. It is an immediate fundraising event. I know you know this, but it's important for us to think about our hospital leadership or our board chair who may say, you have an event audience. Why aren't you asking them for money? You have a captive audience. And I'm here to tell you that not every event should have a fundraising ask associated. We'll get to that magic in the follow-up here at the end, but every event should not, does not include a fundraising solicitation. As we think about what that means, obviously this is when we get into cultivation events. And as you are in a campaign, a cultivation event is key. This is where we really start planting the seeds of impact, a memorable experience, transparency, and how these funds will be used. All of those things that I said are our donors' expectations. If we keep this in mind for a cultivation event, just as we plant the seeds, this is where we really are able to engage, till that soil until we're really able to harvest, and it's worth the wait. This is how we engage to lead to a larger solicitation that will be much larger than any one whole sponsorship. But both of those events are about exposure to mission. You may have new and you may have previously existing donors at both of them, but it is exposure, exposure, exposure. Then as we think about stewardship, this is less exposure and this is more transparency, impact, reporting out, but you're telling a story. And as you are telling this story of how someone's dollars are either being celebrated because maybe they've not been put to use yet, or you're reporting out on how they were used and celebrating that impact. A stewardship event is your very best cultivation event. When you are thanking that donor and telling a story, not only are you inspiring them for their next gift, but you have no idea who is in that room to celebrate that donor and gets inspired themselves. Peer-to-peer events, I am here to tell you that, boy, have they seen a resurgence, and Giving USA today just, let's see, in their 2023 report, noticed a 51% increase in peer-to-peer events, and that is both in the volume and quantity that is happening, as well as the amount of money raised. So peer-to-peer events still hold a place, and they really are also about exposure to the masses. But again, we're here to talk about campaigns, and that goes hand in hand with a launch event. And I told you at the beginning that one of my main priorities is to underscore the differences in what makes us unique in healthcare. And we know we are part of one university, one hospital system, one fill-in-the-blank organization. But our audience is different and they have different expectations. If we don't recognize that, we're skipping something very important to that donor. And that's what I told you to keep in mind. We have to keep their expectations in mind. So as we think about a campaign launch, what are the basics? And you'll see here, I have a few that are bold. We're going to go deeper into those because they hold such importance. But as you are considering your campaign launch event, whether you're in the planning process and it's in the infancy stages, or you're really well on your way, these questions still hold water. They really do. And we need to be considering, do we know the purpose? That seems obvious. We're going to dive deeper. Don't go surface level. We want to go deep. Why are we gathering here? Is it to celebrate, or is it to inspire, or is it to do both? Who are the audiences? We'll get into that. Is this only one event? Are we going to handle multiple events? What type of experience do we want them to have? Are they regional events? How do our volunteers play a role? Do we have budget limitations? And of course, when is the right time? But if you, and we will send these out, the slide deck will be sent to all of you post webinar today. This checklist really ensures that you're covering all of those bases. And you'll note, none of this is about an event logistic. We have to go beyond logistics, and we have to ensure that we have the right strategy and focus during the planning period in order to ensure that by the time we get to choosing the table linens, that we have the right event at the right time for the right people, and then everything else can come together. So I said, we need to make sure that we are not going surface level and saying, well, we're having a campaign launch to kick off the campaign. Yes, of course. But we have to already consider, we've got donors who have been supporting our campaign. For many of you, it likely will have been for, it could be 18 months, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years, even longer. We know we've already had donors to the campaign. How are we including them differently, maybe from some others? We want to create awareness of our campaign. We want to build excitement. We want to build excitement for those who've already seen their dollars in action, and those who haven't even pledged a gift, but they need to be excited about what we're going to do. We want to engage those supporters. We want to secure early commitments. I can tell you a campaign launch event is one of the only times where we really get to use that recognition beyond a name on a wall, beyond a donor recognition board. This is where we get to say, Mr. Smith, I know that you're going to support our campaign. I know you've already been so engaged with us. I know you're not in a rush. We actually are. Not only do we want to celebrate the work and the support that you're giving us, but we want to inspire 300 other people when they're sitting in a room. Will you allow us to do that? Your philanthropy can inspire others. We know you're humble. We know this isn't about that recognition, but it's about the recognition of impact in philanthropy so that you can inspire others. That's really powerful. So as we think about those securing of early commitments and the possible stewardship, that visibility for others is a way that you can really work with your donors, really to speed that gift conversation along, and use this as one of the carrots to get them to move a little faster. And again, it's about demonstrating impact. And this is in both the inspiring to give and also showcasing what you've already done to be good stewards and foster the money that has come in, regardless of campaign. You've got a lot of donors in that room. They want to know that previous gifts were put to good use. And the way to do that is to showcase what you're doing today. And I always say, you want to say, this is where we are today. This is where we can go tomorrow. And this is how you can help. If you have those three components, you're demonstrating impact of both past giving and future giving. I've said audience is important. This is one of the main ways that we differ from our peers. When we think about who we want to invite, we can think about the obvious. Those are our campaign supporters. Anyone who has pledged their support to date, of course, we want them in the room. We want to celebrate them, and we want to let them have a moment to soak in the good work that we're doing and to see themselves amongst their peers who are either giving or considering to give, of course. But we also need to think about, what about other top organizational donors who might not yet have given? Do we have room for them? Is it appropriate? What about those other high capacity prospects that are around the city? And this is one where you'll notice I'm saying it with a question mark in my tone, and that's because it really is a question. This is not a one-size-fits-all checklist. This is not a checklist, as a matter of fact. These are for consideration. You'll have limitations with budget, with the space in the room, with, there's a lot of logistical issues we need to think about. But as we think about this, are we there to celebrate only those who have given? Or are we there to celebrate those that may give in the future and inspire them to give? That's still a question. Many people will use a campaign launch event solely as stewardship, and then they get to talk about it with others. And now they've created a really great cool kids club that others may say, well, I want to be at the celebration event. If you're only going to invite those who have given, I want to give. I want to see my name in lights. That, again, time and place, whether your campaign launch event is stewardship, cultivation, or both, that is for you to decide. We also need to consider the community leaders that we will involve, which hospital staff and volunteers, and let's not forget our patients and families. Exposing our donors in healthcare to those that they are helping and will never meet, that's magical. They get to see in real time patients, families who are touched by illnesses, that there is a whole room of people that are fighting and supporting with their generosity for patients in the future. That's not only beneficial to the room that you're engaging, but it's also really special for your patients and families to be able to see people who can do, people who can support us, are willing to, and look at this room of people fighting for me, fighting for my child, my mother. That's special. Let's talk about timing. And this is a question that I receive quite often. And it typically starts with, well, what point in the campaign do you hold your campaign launch event? That's where we start. And that's an important component, absolutely. So, one, as we think about the campaign phases in timeline. So, as we think about leadership, which used to be known as the quiet or silent phase, we've really kind of backed off of that. We want this to be the worst kept secret in town. We want everyone to know that we're in a campaign, but we also want them to feel like insiders. We don't want to do a press release 5 years in advance. We want those closest to us, those leaders amongst our organization and in our community, to be the first to support. We're really bringing in those largest gifts so that we can get a good base of success before we go public. So as we think about infrastructure, awareness, then we're going into the leadership phase, we're really building that capacity of donors. When we get approximately 60% towards goal, and this requires you to be really on top of forecasting and projections as you are planning, because you want to think of course, the time of year, what other events might you be competing against. But most importantly, we have to ensure that when you go public, you are coming out so strong and saying, look at what our community has already accomplished. And we weren't even public yet. Now, with all of you behind us, we know that we can either meet goal or exceed goal. The best way to do that is to ensure you already have enough in the door that you have a really strong foundation. So we usually recommend around 60% as we're forecasting. I can tell you one of the trends that we are seeing is actually pushing that out even further. We're seeing some organizations that don't launch until they're at about 70 to 75% of the way. And this is something that is a shift, but it's important because I told you that it's that base of support. It's also about, what are we raising money for? Healthcare moves at a rapid pace. We want it to move at a rapid pace. Our patients need cures and therapies. We want that research to be moving so quickly that something new is always around the bend. If we have a 10-year healthcare campaign, our constituents are going to fall asleep at about year 5 because they're bored of hearing about a campaign that they're not really seeing action on, and that loved one needs a cure tomorrow. Why are we moving so slow? It's not that we're moving so slow. We've communicated too early. We don't want it to go stale or stagnant. So that 60 to 75%, that's really our target range. And if you're able to forecast out and then also look at those logistical calendars, that's where we really start to target something. But you're going to want to have a really nice lead up. You need about 18 months, if not longer, to start planning a really effective, large scale campaign launch event. But I just said large scale. I've also said we're different. So how large or how small scale our events are, again, that's up for us to determine and using strategies behind it. I'm going to pause just quickly. I want to make sure that I can check our webinar chat and questions. I think we're good. Again, please do put them in the chat, but we will leave time at the end. So campaign launch trends. I will tell you, anyone who wishes can go to our BWF website, and you're going to find this graphic. It's from 2019. And if you're like me, 2019 seems like both yesterday and a decade ago. The reason that I have included it is because this was the trend path that we were seeing in 2019. Well, I'm here to tell you there was a really big disruptor sometime right after. I think you know where this is going, where all events came to a screeching halt and everyone tried to figure out what is the future. I'm very happy to report, now that we are out on the other side of whatever this is, these launch trends are now coming back around and they maintain that trend line. These are what we are now once again seeing come back and proving to be an important part of all campaign launch events, let alone medical. And I'll tell you that inclusivity, I told you that audience wasn't a checklist. This is an important part. Who we include in our campaign launch events can often send a message. Are we inviting folks from our community? Are we talking with folks from our community? If you're building a new hospital in an urban setting, are those neighbors being impacted by the work that you're about to go celebrate and raise money for? Do they understand what that will do in their backyard? Do we understand what that will do in their backyard? Being inclusive, not just in the event, but in the overall strategy of communications and engagement, it's key to success. We also have multifaceted events. We used to think of a campaign launch was the campaign event, and then you had your signature events. These small cultivation and stewardship events continue to be a critical cornerstone. I would venture to say much more so than even our signature fundraising events. Technology, immersive technology. This is one that, as you can imagine, not only did we see it pre-pandemic, we've seen a big surge. And for those of you who are in comprehensive and/or capital campaigns, even the ability to see a building come to life off of the screen of an iPad. Imagine what a memorable experience that is, that technology has allowed you to envision at an event like this. But also think about the technology we might be asking our event attendees to invest in at a healthcare organization. Technology, AI, we're hearing it everywhere. How does that play a role? Does it play a role? These are things for you to examine both when it comes to the event itself, as well as our fundraising priorities and how we might be showcasing those priorities at our event. Impact, 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 of course. I'll tell you, special event planners, I know many of you who have registered today are the event planners for your shop. That is fantastic. I really encourage you, if you need help, this is something to budget for and plan for. A campaign launch event has so many different components, and you need both internal and external partners. And we're seeing more organizations invest in those resources than ever before. And last but not least, volunteers continue to be a cornerstone of our work. And this means in both the planning stages, it means in the programmatic and on-site at the event, but it also means volunteers helping us in the lead up for who is the right audience? What's our messaging? What will resonate? We cannot operate in a bubble. We need to pull in almost our own focus groups. Who better than our own volunteers? Okay, so as we have said time and time again, are we unique? Why are we unique? Does it play a role in the event? Oh, yes, it absolutely does. So I can tell you that one of the ongoing debates, especially at academic medical centers, and I hear it day in and day out, and it is always medical, they always think they're so different. Why are they so different? Why do they say they're unique? Everybody wants to be a special snowflake. We're different. Our audience is different. And it is not different good. It is not different bad, but it's different. Medicine is personal. That is a line I must say 20 times a day. We know that anytime someone is investing philanthropically, there's obviously a personal component. We know that. That doesn't make us special. When we think about why someone donates, it might be a personal experience, it might be a family experience, it may simply be because they want to help their community. This is different than, let's say, for example, I'm an Ohio State alum. I love Ohio State. I loved my college experience. I loved my professors. It got me on my career path. All of these wonderful reasons for me to give back. It wasn't life or death. It wasn't life or death. There are very few things we get to blow off. Oh, it's not rocket science. For some people, it's rocket science. For us, it's life and death. We might be securing the funds that will be the foundation for tomorrow's therapy, tomorrow's cure. That's the same way our donors feel. They've either experienced it themselves or they want to help someone else's experience. When we think about how that may or may not affect an event, let's keep coming back to Ohio State. As an alum, do I want to be sitting under a huge tent with other alumni, other medical philanthropists? Absolutely. Am I going to enjoy Brutus Buckeye coming out? Absolutely. Am I thinking about my healthcare experience? Am I thinking about what my dollars are going to do to change the therapies of tomorrow? Maybe, maybe not. When we think about that personal impact, we have to think time and place. There is an atmosphere that goes along with collegiate fundraising. Time and place, personal, personal, personal. Roles. When we think about, let's go back to academia, let's go to a smaller nonprofit. You simply have less leaders, you have less faculty, you have less staff. We've got a lot of chiefs, we've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen. We have to balance what everyone's role will be. And depending on your organization, you may have feast or famine. You may have folks who really want to be involved and you've got to balance 8 leaders. You may have 8 leaders who are saying, I want no part of that. That is for you to drive and really inspire to understand the choices that you will make. Location. Why would that be different for us? Well, if I can see the hospital, if I can see it and know that this is the place that I am bringing these cures to and that there are patients in here who need me, it's pretty impactful. But there's other locations that can be just as impactful. We have to think about expenditures differently. If I am celebrating my university and a big blowout event, there might be a crossing, it might cross my mind to go, oh, I wonder how much this cost. I wonder if that could have been a scholarship. Sure. When you are at a big blowout event for healthcare and you look around and you see all of that money being spent, could it have been invested differently? Could it have a different impact? These are questions that we don't necessarily want our guests to be asking that evening and be focusing and or distracting from. And then what's our market landscape? So I've said that medicine is personal. You'll see here BWF conducts it's actually a biannual survey. We really want to talk to the exact audience that we are targeting, and that is affluent healthcare donors. So rather than cast a wide net, BWF focuses exclusively on those who have met 2 criteria. 1, you hit a criteria of high net wealth. What that means, that varies with the landscape. In the 2023 survey, we used a criteria of $200,000 for a household income. And then the second criteria is, and you've donated to a healthcare organization in the last 12 months. Think about how specific that audience is. Isn't that the audience that all of you want to speak to as well? So to garner their insights, we've provided a survey tool, and it really reflects that the reason people give to healthcare is all of these reasons that you see here that I'm sure are not a surprise to you. But again, if we understand what motivates our donors, we can provide them with an event experience that will match that motivation and hopefully inspire them to give again or at a larger level. They're looking for the value to the community. They are looking for that thing that would have made their experience better, be it robes in the mammogram waiting room or a different way to deliver after surgery care. We don't know what that is until we are really engaged with our donors, but we can understand that basic human element of paying it forward for someone else or people like me. Medicine is personal. How many times am I going to say it, right? You see here, this is not something where how many people can we cram into a room? More, more, more. Medicine is such a personal experience. The philanthropic experience is because I was touched by this organization. My mother's just been diagnosed. My brother passed away from X. Whatever it may be, it's so personal that there is no way for you to really get into that emotional, deep personal factor if we're trying to talk to 1,000 people at once. Time and place, great fundraising event, great strategy for a blanket communication style, but is it personal? Is that eyeball to eyeball with tomorrow's future healthcare leaders and the donors of today that are going to fund that person's research? No. We need to think about smaller versus bigger when we're thinking of healthcare. And for the most part, you've heard me say, these are things for you to consider. I can tell you, when you think about healthcare events, I highly encourage you to think smaller is better because we can reach them in a more personalized way. Roles. We need to think about, not only do we have more of them than some of our partners might have, but we also have to think, what is appropriate for them? Are we setting them up for success? Am I putting a nurse in front of a stage and she's not used to speaking in public? Okay, maybe we need to have her as part of a video. Maybe we simply need to have them at a table. Think about the ways that you can seat or have them in the room, even for a portion of the time. The more exposure your donors have to your staff, the better. But I really encourage you to think about, again, unlike some of our partners, we have such varying level of experts on our teams. Think about large, small, top to bottom, who they may be. And just remember, somebody in that room is going to think about their nurse, that researcher. That's special, and you're giving them exposure and that insider experience. And imagine the insider experience you might be providing to your researchers and your nurses. As you're building a culture of philanthropy, think about how their exposure to donors might create your own byproduct of this culture of philanthropy and an even richer picture internally as well as externally. Unique factor of location. I already told you, if you can see your hospital, great. It's really that visual. We've had clients who have a big tent right out on the green space in front of their hospital. They get to wave at the patients in the window. Imagine how impactful that is. It's also not possible for everyone. We understand that. And one of the things that we're seeing is those really historical or traditional, those cornerstones of your community and your city. We used to almost shy away. Well, if everybody has used that room before, that hotel, that space, we want to be unique and different. Absolutely. We always want to stand out. But sometimes we also don't want to overlook the gem of our community as we are trying to portray ourselves as a cornerstone, a must-have, that pillar in our community. Let's think about others in our community and those that we associate. You see, I have here the Rainbow Room. What an iconic place in New York City. And whether your Rainbow Room is quite the scale of the NBC Studios Rainbow Room, when you think about your city and what makes you special, don't shy away from those traditional locations, because you can also tie them in to your messaging and your part in the community. I talked about the expenditures and how you may have a glancing question of, boy, wonder if that could have been a scholarship. I get it. Our academic partners must also consider cost and budget and ROI, without a doubt. But when you are really thinking about the big splashy events, of course, we want you to have a buttoned up event that is sophisticated and elegant or fun and inspiring in its own way. We want all of that. How you do that does not need to be on such a scale that you are, again, detracting or distracting your guest by them looking around and thinking, wow, I wonder how much that acrobat cost. Does an acrobat really have anything to do with healthcare, philanthropy, anything we're talking about tonight? Is it cool? Sure. If it doesn't tie back to mission and it isn't that personally engaging experience, it might have been memorable, but was it really a good return on that investment? We have to think differently. Again, I come back to, we're dealing with life and death. When we think about $1 million event, what part of that budget could have been used for a research project? We have to spend money to make money. I'm not saying let's not have an expensive event. but we have to be careful with the balance, and we really have to be careful with the optics. You may know that the acrobats are pro bono. They're just donating their services. You know that. Does the room know that? Are they still distracted by wondering what you paid for those acrobats? These are the things that we have to ask ourselves again from that donor experience standpoint. Market landscape. What do I mean by that? I already told you, you have to plan out well ahead, and you have to think about, when am I going to get to 60 to 75% towards goal? You have to plan, you have to have a runway. You can't plan for things that pop up 18 months from now. It might seem like 18 years, but we still have to think about it. And I have to say that if there are things going on in your community, maybe something big in the news, it doesn't mean we cancel the event. It means that we recognize it. We want to make sure that we're calling out the elephant in the room if there is one. So this is more something that we have to check in real time versus plan for, but we can also plan for some unique factors as it relates to the market landscape, including, how's your community landscape right now? What's the temperature on what they think of healthcare philanthropy? We have certain communities where they're having a fantastic campaign. They're ahead of goal. And I can tell you this happens a lot in the Northeast. They're doing great with their donors. They don't want to go so public that they get questions from those who might not be as savvy or might not be as interested in philanthropy, but they start to question it. I have here the stethoscope with money. We know that this is something that we always keep on our radar. What do people think of grateful patient fundraising? It's going to be a mixed bag of opinions. Those who really understand the ethical way that we approach this, they're open and receptive. We don't know for our whole community. And dependent on your specific situation, it's important that you understand, what is that temperature? What are those optics? What's that perception of us? And much like my friends in the Northeast, they choose to go forward with campaign launch events. They just don't do a press release. It's a small little thing, but it actually makes a big difference for them. And then I have my beautiful little horse here, Yahoo. And this is all about college mascots. And we may or may not have had the rights to use an actual college mascot. So you get Yahoo, my little buddy here. And this really goes to, medicine is personal. If I am at an event with my mascot and we are celebrating everything that my university has to offer, I am excited. But you haven't talked to me about the thing that is most personal. And that's my healthcare, my mom's healthcare, my dad's healthcare. When we say medicine is personal, the messaging, the event, think small, think custom. These big collegiate events, we want to be a part of them. We can attend them. We are supporting our colleagues who are planning them. But I really encourage you to understand you are a small part of those types of events. You can have a different type of event that has a much bigger impact for your donors who want that personalized experience. The program. I'm going to tell you, short and sweet, tell a story. It seems so basic. Medicine is personal. Your program should be too. And this is why when I think of the collegiate atmosphere and these larger campaigns, again, we are good partners. We are a part of one mission. Our donors see themselves also as part of that bigger mission. But when it comes to their large investment of significant philanthropy, it's niche, it's personal. How do we do that? How do we get to them? We tell a story. We can't tell that story to 1,000 people and it resonate with 1,000 people. But if you've got the right audience, you're starting to resonate in the right ways. And that means we highlight stories. We highlight the stories of what our campaign will do. Don't explain just here's the priorities. What does it mean once they're implemented? What does it mean if they're not? What does it mean if we're not a success in this campaign? What will be missing from your healthcare tomorrow because we couldn't find the funding? We don't want to be desperate, but we want to paint a picture. And the best way to do that is through narrative and really telling that story that includes our nurses, our doctors, our leaders, our community members. I just said we do not want to be desperate. So there are some cautionary tales that we need to be thinking of. And we want to make sure that when we're inspiring philanthropy and talking about this campaign and what it's going to do, it's important that we state it in such a way that we know we can accomplish these goals. This isn't just saying we want the cures of tomorrow. Sounds nice, but those who really are going to invest, and those of us who are professionals and work with our team, we know it's not just this fluffy, nice bumper sticker slogan that we come up with, the cures for tomorrow. What does it mean? Tell me more, be specific. But it's also, it's not our destiny. We're not just magically going to raise $3 billion. You can put the goal out there. How are we going to do it? And if they aren't seeing themselves a part of it and go, oh, it's so great, Kara Wagner said they're going to raise $3 billion. Love it for them. Did they say us? Did they say we? No, it was them. We need to ensure that they understand we cannot be successful without you. This is not a sure bet. We need your help. We also want to make sure that we're not being desperate in that process. And honestly, it's these unintended consequences that we just need to keep an eye out for. And those unintended consequences can range from, again, we might be excluding a donor audience. If we have forgotten about our community members that might be impacted by a new building in their backyard, if we're not talking about them and really engaging the right people at the right time, there can be some unintended messaging that comes across in that that's going to stop us in our tracks. The magic happens in the follow through. I said it is so tough for us at times to ensure that our leaders understand and our board members and volunteers understand why we aren't asking for money at a campaign launch event or a campaign cultivation event. That can be transactional. It does not have the long runway of the relationship, the deep engagement to lead to deeper philanthropy. We know that as event professionals and fundraising professionals. We have to understand we do this for a living, they do not. You have a captive audience. Why wouldn't you ask them for money? The magic is in the follow through where your staff in advance knows what that follow through plan will be. Of course, anyone that they meet that night, how are we following up with them? What is the email communication post event? How will they get photos post event? Will they see this in the press? Has our internal staff been told in advance? Do we need to get communication to them? These are all of the post-event follow-through strategies that we do not want to wait and plan once the event has happened. We want to make sure that we're getting out well ahead of that so that our gift officers know exactly what they need to do. They're going to have people that they meet that night that might have might need to pivot. You might need to call somebody sooner, later, whatever that may be. Of course, there's going to be the one-offs. But if we have a solid reach out plan where they can block their calendars the Monday after a Saturday night event to say, hey, what'd you think of the event? What did you think of our campaign? Questions that we want to get their feedback. That is engagement, but we must plan for it and make no assumptions that any of our staff automatically know that they need to do that. This is where tales of success will truly come about. And I'm going to give you one brief example of this. I was recently speaking to someone from Vanderbilt University, and I can tell you they did the very large kickoff event, and it was academic, it was medical, it was everyone. Those medical partners realized well in advance, this is about all of us, but we're going to have something separate afterwards. And when we have those smaller salon style events where we're exposing 10, 20, maybe 30 people to 2 impactful researchers and 1 leader, one night, 2 hours in someone's home, light lift, light budget, all of these great things, they plan for it. Within one event, they raised $1 million, not because they asked for it. Literally, a person from their follow-up medical only event said, I want to give to this campaign. not even solicited, a self-identified, I want to give to this campaign. That is the follow-up. That is a tale of success. And I'm going to give them a lot of credit because they, again, identified that we are not going to be a large part of this kickoff event. We're one small piece. We need to proactively plan for that really focused but smaller event with the right people. That's our time to shine, not just be one component of the event. I cannot underscore enough how important that is. And that's also with your regional partners. Don't forget, while we know that we have grateful patients coming in from across the country for the very best healthcare, we also have to go to them sometimes too, especially when we're trying to inspire philanthropy. Don't forget that in your campaign kickoff and cultivation events, go to them, budget for it, plan for it. Nice, focused events in their own backyard, hundreds and if not thousands of miles away. That is impactful. And oftentimes those donors are the ones who are willing to host it in their own home. Don't be afraid to ask and pick up the phone and inspire them to be a part of this campaign as both a partner and a supporter. That is where magic really starts to come together. So with that, I want to ensure that I have left enough time for questions. So I have some time here that please do put into the chat or the Q&A. We have a couple already. So we have, when you say small events can be better, what size range are you using? Under 50 or under 25? I can tell you 50 is the cap. 50 starts to get into a pretty large event where you have a lot of logistics, a lot of different opinions of what is this expectation? What am I at? The smaller, the better. Our target is that 20-ish range. That's 10 couples, maybe up to 30. If you think about coming into a small, intimate space, and while you can rent a space, it can even be at someone's office. If I'm coming into a living room and this is my network and I see peers amongst me, I can tell in a group of 20 or 30 who shares my values, who shares my interests, who's really talking about healthcare with the same passion that I have. When we start getting to 50 or more, it waters down your audience, and it can have that unintended consequence of watering down your message and even the unspoken message by being able to look around and truly identify those like-minded peers. I will tell you, we can even have small events. 10 people is enough for a really impactful cultivation event, stewardship event. Really and truly, the smaller, the better doesn't mean that there's even a floor there. This is something where you and your host, you and your leadership, you're identifying the right people at the right time. Don't be bound too much to those parameters. How do you navigate event spending optics when you are affiliated with a safety net hospital that serves larger percent of low-income patients? Fantastic question. And you see, I even put in there, you may know what you're spending and it might not be a lot. It's the optics. So it's really important. I'm going to actually go to audience on this one. You want to watch your expenses, of course, while providing a lovely experience. One, think about where you're holding it and who the audience is. If you're holding it in an event or in a home, that automatically, those optics change like that, right? That's an obvious one. But as we think about maybe a larger event that we do really have to consider, what are our investments and what are the optics associated? If you have the right people in the room, those who have already supported you, have already seen that you are good stewards of their investments, of their money, of other donor dollars, you're going to be okay. This is where, if you really are, in this case, a safety net hospital, look at your core group of donors, celebrate them, charge them with going out and spreading the message. But that might be an event where you really don't want too many unknown prospects because they don't know you well enough to know you're spending appropriately, that you are good fiscal stewards, that you are agents for this hospital and doing the right thing for our patients, if they don't know that already, they may ask more questions. If you have these additional concerns, this is where the audience can make all the difference in the world, as well as that location and possible host who are able to say, I was happy to underwrite this. I wanted to do this for our hospital so that we could expose our mission to all of you. But my team of fundraisers, they have already ensured that we will not spend an exorbitant amount on events. So I have underwritten this for you. Imagine a donor just outright saying that. And they will, and they are willing to do that if you're able to help them understand why that's an important messaging point. Any thoughts about ongoing events once a campaign has been launched? Thank you. I am so glad you've asked this question. Yes, yes, yes. Continue to hold those campaigns, or I'm sorry, those events. This is when you really want to encourage people to host those smaller salon events. You may have some folks who maybe they're not ready for the big solicitation yet, or it's just their timing. Maybe you don't know them well enough, but you know that they have a beautiful home on the lake. Ask them to be a part of this. You're looking for partners because when they have that partnership, they're feeling invested, which will lead to greater philanthropy. But it's also a great way for you to involve. I talked about all of the roles. We have so many different people in our organizations. How do we involve them all? Imagine if we can take them on road shows. We're going to take a researcher this time. We're going to take a leader this time. I'm going to take a nurse because I know with this audience, I'm most likely going to talk about our nursing excellence programs. These are the things where if you match audience with messaging points and the speakers, you really can create something new and fresh every single time. And it's okay if you need to duplicate. Take it on the road show, duplicate it across the country, or be customized. Both ways are right, but the most important thing is we are trying to finish out that last, 30, 40% of the campaign, 25% of the campaign. Well, how do we do that? We do that with gifts of all shapes and sizes. This is where we're going large scale, which also means multiple events, multiple touch points. Okay, I think I know that we are, the last two questions are about launch event trends and campaign close events. I know that we're at time, so I want to very quickly go through this. And I'll just tell you, as far as the closing events, yes, they also are still occurring and they're still an important part. This is where it is all about impact and really showcasing what will happen beyond the campaign. So while we want to celebrate, we want to ensure that as everybody leaves the event that night, that they're celebrating the work that has been done, but no one thinks that every disease has a cure, has a therapy. We want them to know what goes beyond the campaign. So I think it's really important that we kind of close with that. Do not forget, a campaign sets you up for long-term sustainable fundraising that you want to maintain even after a campaign. That campaign close event is the place for you to really launch into. So what's our future? Where do we go now? Our doors will not close. We are not done. Thank you. Celebrate. Now let's go move on to the next. That is the most important thing with a campaign close event. Well, thank you all. I know that a few people had to hop as we neared the end there. We would really appreciate your feedback. We want to ensure that we're delivering great content for all of you. So please do snap here on the QR code and provide your feedback. And there are a few questions that came through the chat that I will answer individually after. Want to make sure that I reach out and provide that for all of you, but also please do reach out to me. You'll see my contact information here. Of course, it's on the website and you can find me on LinkedIn, but happy for any follow-up or additional questions. All right, all, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me, and I wish you all the best of luck as you continue forward with your event planning. Bye-bye.